Hello everyone, I needed something kind of relaxing to do, so here I am talking over the worst licensed game I've ever played, Alpha Teens on Machines, based on the cartoon of the same name. And I want you to remember when you look at this game's presentation and graphics that this came out in 2007. 2007. So the thing that drew me to this game, because I realize it may be hard to tell without an explicit statement, the reason I wanted to play this game is because it's a driving game, not a racing game, a driving game. Those are very distinct. A lot of people don't see the distinction, but a driving game is a game where you are driving and you're not just racing. There are other objectives involved. And I suppose the structure here is a bit odd for a driving game, because most driving games, even if they're not open world, let you choose between multiple missions. This one's very linear. But you might be able to tell they had no budget to work with, or didn't want to have a budget to work with, so that might be why. Another thing that instantly intrigued me about this game was I saw people having a lot of trouble controlling it properly. And usually when I see people having trouble controlling a driving game properly, it's the same reason every time. It's that they don't let go of the gas while they're turning. I was expecting it to be the same case here, and as such I figured I could easily make the turns that everyone else was having trouble with. But no, that's not the case. You have to slow to pretty much an absolute crawl to make the turns properly, but not only that, driving using the R2 button to accelerate is a bad idea. There are two options for accelerating. You can use the right stick or the R2 button. Using the R2 button for some reason makes the game control a lot worse. Makes your acceleration really wonky. And I can't understand why that would be. But thankfully even the time crucial objectives in this game are accommodating to the fact that you have to slow down a lot to make the turns. So it's not so bad. This is another game, by the way, that I saved from obscurity. There were no full playthroughs of this game anywhere until I bothered to record one, and it's easy to see why. I mean, it looks and feels like garbage. There's no love or attention put into it at all. It's pretty lifeless, pretty soulless. It's not fun to play. I imagine for most people it's not fun to play. I will be the first to admit I did have some fun playing it. But it's very difficult for me not to get some enjoyment out of the games I play, no matter how bad. And there's a big difference between enjoying something and thinking it's good, and this is not a good game. For this mission, by the way, we are tasked with destroying all of the robots around the training facility. We do have a single gun mounted at the front of our ATV thing that we fire by pressing the R1 button. We don't get a lock-on or anything like that. We do have a time limit, but it is rather generous, and if we miss a robot, we can just loop around the course until we find it again. This game has a bit of an odd aiming system, and that the aiming works better if you are driving backwards, because otherwise the shots tend to go over the enemy's head. I think it takes me a while to realize this, but that's just how it works. You know, I can't remember how far back exactly, but I think it was around 2010, 2011, when I first started looking into less than popular games, which led me down the dark path I'm on right now. I was often surprised at the negative reception these unpopular games got, and most of them didn't seem that bad at all to me. But we're talking stuff like Never Dead and Dark Void, stuff like that, you know? We're not talking Sid the Dummy. I didn't go that deep yet. I wonder what would have happened if I discovered Alpha Teens on Machines way back then. Would I have been really nice to it? Because I was a lot nicer to games back then. Nicer doesn't mean kinder, mind you, but I was nicer. That was, of course, also around the time I was watching a super great friend play Xbox Live Indie games. And I thought quite a few of those looked nice. I've been rewatching that recently, and some of the ones I thought looked nice still look nice to me. But several of the ones I wanted to play back then I want nothing to do with now. Makes me wish I kept a more consistent journal. You know, it is honestly a real shame to me that Xbox Live Indie Games is getting taken down. Even if Xbox Live Indie Games objectively only had the worst games imaginable, like games that couldn't even be finished, they were so broken, I still wouldn't want to see it get taken down. That's something that I'm actually scared of with digital art. It's very easy to get rid of. There are plenty of games that get removed from services every day that aren't available anymore, and that breaks my heart. Like, there's this really terrible Warriors beat 'em up. No, not the one made by Rockstar. There's this other Warriors beat 'em up that was available on the Xbox 360. And I wanted to try that out, see if it was really as bad as everyone said, and I can't now. It's gone forever. There's no way to get it anywhere. And it's not just the terrible stuff I have a personal interest in, you know, a lot of good games get taken down forever. And there's nothing anyone can do about that. If a license expires and your game was released on physical media, people can still find that because you can't get rid of that. Unless you know, seek out people and try and burn down their copies of the game, which, I mean, that hasn't happened yet, but let's not rule it out. You know, I'm just saying someone needs to do a full Let's Play of Colony's Neo Civ. Is that what it was called? Yeah, I think it was Colony's Neo Civ, or Neo Civ Colonies. One of those two. Someone needs to do a full Let's Play of that, and it's not going to be anyone else but me. But I don't own an Xbox 360. Maybe I can just ask the developer if they would kindly put it on Steam, or Desura, or something. We're supposed to be escorting a VIP, by the way. He's on our radar somewhere. It doesn't matter. This mission's really easy. It's very, very easy to destroy the cars before they're any threat to the VIP. I think the VIP is the blue guy on our radar. But now he's stuck back there. The AI will do that sometimes. It will get stuck. With the quality of this game, I expected that at least one place the game would get stuck in a way that I couldn't complete. But usually bumping into the AI enough gets them unstuck. And there are much better games with glitches like this that actually are game-breaking. So I want to give this game a break for not being broken in a way that makes it unfinishable. You know, even if it is weird that the car blinks in and out of existence. I can tell you why it's doing that, by the way. Usually when cars blink out of existence like that, they're trying to teleport to a safer location. But for some reason the VIP isn't doing that. It's alright, because eventually he figures it out. Actually, I don't know who the VIP is. The story in this game, kind of non-existent. The only story is the objectives we get, really. This game was developed by Brain in a Jar, by the way. And I originally considered using this footage to do another rough history, but this time for Brain in a Jar. But that turned out to be a really underwhelming concept, because Brain in a Jar is basically just a discount Data Design Interactive. Except they also made some games for Blast, furthering their scheme to suck money from any low-hanging license they could get their hands on. Brain in a Jar actually published a game pretty much identical to this one, also for Blast. That one was called Captain Scarlet, based on a really old serial that I don't actually know anything about. But I know enough to know that it was a licensed game, and it was published by Blast, as most of these terrible licensed games released in PAL regions are. But you know, I thought, this can't be all the developers' fault all the time. Like, surely Blast put some restrictions on the developers they hired to make these awful games. You know, it might not be the developers' fault at all. We don't know what kind of restrictions they were working under. But no, all of Brain in a Jar's games are like this. I'm glad the VIP eventually got unstuck. I was doing that for like, what, 3 minutes? It doesn't matter. I was doing that for too long. I do this thing a lot when I'm playing really bad games, where I try to think of something positive to say or something I liked about it, and then I realize it's not something unique. It's something that should come standard with games like this. For example, I was going to start this mission off by saying, oh, I should mention that in this game, all the vehicles control differently. They all have different handling. And then I was like, oh, well, duh. Why wouldn't a game with several different vehicles have different handling? Seriously, why wouldn't it? That's not something you get to put in the plus column. That comes standard. If for some reason the vehicles all had identical handling, then that would be something worth talking about, because that would be impressive, and I'd have to wonder why they didn't even bother. Brain in a Jar is one of those weird cases where I had to wonder if the developers even cared about their profession. Usually I assume developers care by default even if their games are really bad, because there's a lot of reasons things can go wrong. Back when I used to argue about games more on the internet, I had very strong opinions on graphics. And I had this dumb phrase I'd like to say. I didn't get to use it too much, but I would say, there's no reason to complain about a game's graphics if it came out after 2007. And that's obviously, you know, incredibly flawed logic, but the sentiment was that any game that came out after 2007 would have graphics polished enough that you could tell what was on screen, and thus you should suck it up. Because if you could tell what everything you were looking at was and didn't have to use your imagination to fill in the blanks, I was good. I didn't need anything else. My opinion has changed since then, but I do think a lot of games are nice looking, that a lot of other people think look pretty bad. And my appreciation of graphics doesn't seem to, like, scale with everyone else's. Obviously newer games are going to look prettier, but I don't think I'm ever going to think that Knack doesn't look pretty, no matter how pretty games get, and I'm never going to think Watchmen doesn't look atmospheric, no matter how more atmospheric games get. There can be more atmospheric and more pretty games, but Knack and Watchmen will still be pretty and atmospheric themselves. Because, you know, I don't think it needs to be just pretty and not pretty. Old games that were pretty at the time can stay pretty, and we can just have prettier games. Everybody can be pretty, unless your graphics are actually bad. I just realized I'm not sure if I referred to Watchmen as Watchmen The End Is Nigh back there, but yes, I am referring to the video game, the beat 'em up, not the film. I'm sure the film is pretty too, but I haven't watched it. I was too interested in the game, which has its own really nice story, really good graphics, really solid atmosphere, great gameplay, uses minimalism very well, and I would love to record it, but I only own it for Steam, and my computer is a toaster. A toaster remarkably capable of running Kick-Ass 2, though. I mean, yeah, I can run The End Is Nigh on max settings, but when I try to record it, my damn laptop catches on fire. The thought occurs to me, I wonder if anyone ever complained about the Kick-Ass 2 game not being multiplayer. I'm aware that the original Kick-Ass game, which is also beat 'em up, was definitely multiplayer, and also top-down. But I see a lot of people complaining about modern beat 'em ups when they don't have multiplayer components. And I understand that was a big reason to play beat 'em ups apparently back in the day, but I always played beat 'em ups solo, you know? So that always seemed like such a weird complaint to me. But then again, I also thought it was weird people complained about Bomberman not having multiplayer, so take what I say with a grain of salt, I guess. The only beat 'em up I can think of that I would think is absolutely essential to play multiplayer would be Double Dragon Neon, because so much of the game is lost without that. And it's not even like the multiplayer changes the gameplay entirely. It's just that there's a sense of camaraderie that comes from playing Double Dragon Neon multiplayer that I haven't seen in any other beat 'em ups. And I have played stuff like Castle Crashers and Scott Pilgrim, and those are nicer in multiplayer, but you don't fucking high-five your buddy to give him extra health or a power boost. I was going to make a joke that these videos I do just to relax, these let's question mark videos, are like what normal Let's Plays are, I think, but they're really not. Normal Let's Plays are focused on reacting to things, and not really reacting to anything, am I? It's basically just stream of consciousness shit. Everything that's coming out is just stuff that's in my head right now, because there's nothing to react to on screen. I wanted to talk about how the grass reminds me of The Simpsons Road Rage, but that's kind of an insult to Simpsons Road Rage. The graphics in Simpsons Road Rage weren't beautiful, but they were a lot better than this. Oh, we won. Speaking of road rage and driving games in general, since this is one of those two, there was a driving game that was supposed to come out for the PS4 and Xbox One late in 2016. It was just called Road Rage, and it was an open-world driving game about people on motorcycles taking over the city with their gangs. And you got to hit people off the side of the motorcycles with weapons like sledgehammers and shit. And I was super into that. I mean, I really didn't care about the details. I just knew it was a new open-world driving game that wasn't Grand Theft Auto or Saints Row or Watch Dogs. So I was super into that. But 2016 came and went, and it wasn't released. So, of course, I emailed Maximum Games a lot and asked when it was coming out, because that's what they have a press email for, so I can bother them about that kind of stuff. Eventually, they responded recently. They said they don't have any news about it, but they'll make a statement soon. And that seemed kind of conflicting to me. How can you make a statement soon if you don't have any news about it? Oh my god, you know, I just realized this actually ties back into Alpha Teens on Machines. Maximum Games published a lot of Brain in a Jar's other titles that came out on the Wii, and they were garbage. Maximum Games used to publish a lot of shovelware. But now they publish respectable shit like Troll and Die, so now they've really stepped up their game. Now that we're talking about game publishers again, I brought up Blast earlier in the video, and how they try and squeeze money out of any low-hanging licenses they can get their hands on. Brain in a Jar is just one of the many developers they hired to do that. They also hired Atomic Planet Interactive. They made the infamously bad Beverly Hills Cop first-person shooter, the Jumanji Party game on the PS2, and the Charlotte's Web game on the PS2. All of them really terrible games. And while those were the most infamously awful, I think the Miami Vice game they developed is really overlooked. It's equally bad, but far more interesting in my opinion. It seems to be based off one of the episodes of Miami Vice, and it has this really weird end credits music that at first I thought was taken from somewhere, like they licensed an old song that was no longer relevant and used it for the credits music, but I can't find it anywhere. That might be the main reason that the Miami Vice game on PS2 is interesting to me. I mean, I know the idea of commissioning someone to sing songs isn't that outlandish, but that doesn't seem like something Blast would allow, something that Blast would have a budget for. Then again, I can't remember if that one was published by Blast. Might have been published by Davilex, which dealt in similar really terrible licensed games, but to a lesser extent than Blast. I know Davilex developed Beach King Stunt Racer, which actually looked kind of interesting and fun to me. It's like a driving game combined with a Tony Hawk game, and I kind of want to play that. Trying to remember other games that Blast published on the PS2. They had a Xena game. What's it called? Xena the Warrior Princess? Something like that. Had one of those on the PS2, and any information I could find about it insisted that Blast developed it in-house. But I don't believe that. No, wait, hold on, let me look this up. Okay, apparently it was EM Studios, which developed another game for Blast, Johnny Bravo and the Hucka Mega Mighty Ultra Extreme Datorama. That's weird that Blast got a hold of the Johnny Bravo license, but I guess he wasn't doing much at the time. There's apparently a pretty decent Xena game on the PS1, but in my opinion, if you're going down that road, just get the Hercules game on the Nintendo 64. That's where it's at. Holy shit, I've been doing this for 20 minutes.